Hello, everyone. Welcome to Liam's Lyceum. I'm your host, Liam, aka Himvar, and today I'm doing another weekly update. I actually missed last week, so this is Liam's Leapings 25, 14th of January, 2023. I know the audio quality is probably better than my normal recordings, but I hope the video quality is good enough. So I have quite a bit to talk about since I did miss last week's update. But again, this is just where I mostly talk about what I've read, a little bit about writing if I got any done. Yeah, that's about it actually. So let me get started. Let's see at the top of my pile here real quick. It's actually the last thing I finished. Old Moon Quarterly Issue 2, Volume 2. Old Moon Quarterly 2. It is pretty good, actually. I enjoyed this more than the first issue, which I talked about when I read that. It's over there somewhere, my bookshelf. This one had, in the first issue, I liked all the stories, but I think there was like only two that kind of stood out to me. And the other two I just thought were fine. In this one, I actually really liked the first three. And the fourth one was pretty good too. My favorite, I'm not actually sure, but maybe number 2, which is The Bloody Staircase. So I mentioned a few weeks ago reading the first one, which is The Last Line by Jonathan Olfert, but The Bloody Staircase is by Gabriela Officer Narvasa. I think this is their first publication. It was pretty good. I liked it a lot. And then we had The Silence of the Rogue by Jason Ray Carney. Jason Ray Carney is a name you probably know if you're familiar with modern sword and sorcery. He is the editor for Whetstone and for Witch's House, whatever it's called. And he's a scholar, actually. I've read some of his stories about the Rogue in the Cromcast Chronicle a few times. And then the last one's The Horde by Matthew Castleman, which is about dragons, which is cool. And this one actually has extra stuff too. So it has an interview with John Langan. I'm not really sure how to say his name, which is pretty interesting. I've never read anything by him, though. He does have some stuff I want to read. There's also an interview with D.M. Ritzlin. Yeah, D.M. Ritzlin, who's the guy of DMR Books, basically. So there's that. Fun. I will throw that somewhere. Anyways, and then I read Tacitus. I say his name like that on purpose. I realize he is normally called Tacitus in English. But I read his Agricola. I don't really know how to say that one, but and his Germania. The first one is basically a biography of his father-in-law, actually, Agricola. And Germania is an ethnography about the Germani, the people who inhabited Germany, which different boundaries than it does today, obviously. This is a long time ago, but it was pretty good, actually. I read Germania in one sitting. I read this all yesterday, so I mean, it's pretty short. But the Germania really caught my attention. I really like that one. So the biography one of the Agricola has some parts talking about Britannia, but it isn't. It's not called Britannia for a reason, because it's not explicitly about Britannia. But it does have some stuff about that, because Agricola was like basically the governor of Britannia for a while. Here's one book I finished earlier in the week. That is The Narrow Bridge Beyond the Holocaust by Isaac Newman. I knew this guy when I was younger, just slightly. I don't remember hardly anything. I was really young when I went to, we called it temple, actually, when I was younger. It was a Reform Jewish synagogue. So, but it's pretty interesting hearing some experiences. The Holocaust is all different than other ones I've read before, which I've generally read in class, different classes over the years. This one, he's Polish, actually. I think of like something ridiculous, like over 10,000 or about 10,000 Jews who lived in this city of Zduńska Wola, I think. Something like that. Yeah, that sounds right. I don't know. Before the Holocaust, only about 60 survived. And he's one of those 60. It's quite sad, as you can imagine. It's a good reminder of things. It's very heavily faith-filled. It's got a lot of interesting Jewish, like religious belief stuff in it, especially, with like Polish Jews, which is pretty cool. I mean, the guy went on to be a rabbi, so maybe it's not super surprising that it's super religious, but it's very cool. A nice change in pace for me. And then I read Le Morte d'Arthur by Sir Thomas Malory. Um, this is actually a rather cheap copy. I don't remember who did this, who publishes this, but it's got some illustrations throughout it. It's pretty fun. Canterbury Classics, that's what it is. It's really long and it's really repetitive, but it's Arthurian myth, and it's like basically all the Arthurian myth joined into one volume, and it's pretty entertaining, honestly. There's just a lot of phrases that are overused, which is fine, but it's kind of funny, right? You can just say, "Oh, she made great dole," or "They gave a dolorous strike," and they cast fi, and then the knight was hight Sir something. Anyways, so I like the archaism. Actually, looking at the Middle English for the book, this is a modern English. The Middle English is rather late and is rather easy to understand. I just didn't have a Middle English version. Kind of wish I did, because that would have been nice practice. It's pretty, like I said, it's pretty easy to understand in that case. Let me double check. See, I think that's all the books in my stack that I finished. Oh yeah, because I put one back because I put a couple back actually, because they were originally ones I talked about in last week's update. I recorded most of it and my phone did something stupid, and so I wasn't able to use the footage. So I also read, let's see, I finished Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I don't have a physical copy of that right now, but that was really short, pretty good classic Gothic horror. Really short. I read it all today. I also finished The One-Eyed King by Ed Greenwood. It was also a pretty short novel. It's part of the Fate of the Norns. Takes place in, I want to say, early 10th century Dublin, or particularly Athclia, however the heck you say it, which is basically a settlement that is now presently part of Dublin. I think Dublin and Athclia were technically separate settlements at one point, though. I've not played Fate of the Norns, but I would like to. And then I also finished Beowulf in the North Before the Vikings. Is the first book I finished in the year, actually. It's by Tom Shippey. Really good, really good. Shippey is an excellent scholar. I can't say that you should believe everyone or believe anyone really 100%, but this was really well done, really well put together. It uses a lot of Tolkien's ideas and kind of goes against some of Tolkien's ideas in some ways as well. But Shippey believes that Tolkien would have felt the same, actually, because he's kind of talking about what's Beowulf in the North Before the Vikings, right? So, I should just make a video on it. I don't know if I will, but it's really good. You should get a copy. It's pretty short too. It's not even 200 pages. So if you can find a copy, I don't remember which press prints it, but I also read The Fall of Arthur by J.R. Tolkien. I finished this one on Tolkien Reading Day, so that was like the third. I think it was the same day I actually finished Beowulf in the North Before the Vikings. It's an incomplete poem. I was reading Le Morte d'Arthur, of course, so I was in the mood for Arthurian stuff, and it's really good, actually. I liked it. Of course, it's Tolkien is one of the few Tolkien books I have that I hadn't read. So, yeah, there's that. Okay, now I can get into stuff that I have right here. So I'm reading The Fifth Head of Cerberus by Gene Wolfe. I'm still in the first novella, which is The Fifth Head of Cerberus. I'm really enjoying it. I am maybe about halfway through that novella, a little over halfway. It's 80-something pages from 50-something, so I'm really enjoying it. This is earlier Wolfe, 1972, I believe. This is just great so far. I'm really looking forward to finishing this one out. And then I am also still presently reading Skallagrim, but this is kind of early part of, I don't really do book hauls, but I just show you the books I got in the week, if I remember. This is by Stephen R. Babb. I have a digital copy the author sent me, actually, and I've been really enjoying the book. It's just, I haven't been doing any digital reading. So I was like, maybe if I get a physical copy. I haven't done a lot of physical reading either until just the last couple of days, but I was like, maybe if I get a physical copy, I will get through this quicker because I'm enjoying it. This is a 2022 release. Sword and Sorcery. It's pretty good. This is a member of Glass Hammer. I still haven't listened to him yet. I'm going to listen to him before I finish the book at some point. And then if you're on the Discord, you saw me probably bemoaning like academia and stuff like that. That was at least a little bit of my experience a few days ago. I am reading for the 5th time in my life the Iliad, and that's cool. I like the Iliad. It's not my favorite by any means. It's a little long. I like my epics shorter, but no, it's cool. I like the Iliad, of course. I mean, the first time I read the Iliad was on my own. I was in 8th grade, and it was this copy. It wasn't like this actual one, but same version as my dad's copy. I have a funny story tied to that book actually, but I won't share that here. But yeah, Iliad for class for some reason. This is actually kind of my complaint. I'm reading it for a class called the Classical Heritage, which I think is like, how do I choose the right words here? I don't think it's overdone in the sense that like I don't feel like you can really well, you probably could, but for the most part, I don't think that like it's overplayed how much the classical world has influenced our world, right? But in the sense, I think it's overdone by how much when you talk about that, you're often not talking about other things that are also insanely influential, right? And so like the classical world is really influential. There's a lot of heritage there. There's also a lot of heritage and stuff like, for example, I know my department at school will never talk about, and that's disappointing to me, because in my mind, that's stuff I think that's personally it's more interesting to me. I guess it's probably not to everyone else. Um, I mean, I'm also like contrarian by nature, and if since everyone loves the classics and they love Greeks and Romans, um, I'm just less inclined, which, I've taken Latin several times in school. So, I mean, obviously I still like the stuff. Right. And I just read Tacitus, but I don't know. I'd like to be able to teach, because I'm not qualified, but in some ways I am, I feel like, to be able to teach something like, I don't know if I want to call it the English heritage. I think one thing with the humanities, at least at my school, it's almost focused entirely on the fine arts. And that's cool. That's not at all entirely what the humanities is. But a lot of times these days, those other parts that make up the humanities get their own department, like English, or religion for that matter. And the English department in most schools, really, since like the 50s, have failed to do a good job. Sorry, any English majors. And I know I'm generalizing there. But I think if we were to do something like the English heritage, which in some ways sounds bad, because I mean, I don't really feel like much connection, as I'm not English at all, right? You know what I mean? But I do speak English, and I think language is an insanely important part of culture. Why? Because it's necessary. Like it is, right? Like you always have your language, and so that's kind of where I focused on language a lot when I was younger, and that's kind of where it got me today, where it's like I like language a lot. Okay. And so I like my language a lot. Because a lot of people like to say, white people don't have culture, which is ridiculous. Because I have plenty of culture. But anyways, I'm not here to rant. But it's just, to me, it's just like, I think the language is important. So like, if we were to do something like, at least in America and this school, I think it would be fun to go from like the earliest, like English material, talk about it in the fine arts, to not just reading, because I realized the humanities at my school focuses on the fine arts, but literature is important in that, obviously, too. Talk about it from like Cadman's Hymn up to probably early Gothic novels, up till maybe like the United States gets its independence or something. I think that'd be really fun, get a chance to read some Old English, some Middle English, like a chivalric romance or something. You get to look at a lot of stuff that you just don't talk about basically at all in the school, and you don't talk about in a lot of schools. Like, you seem to skip over the medieval stuff and focus like solely on classical stuff and the Renaissance, which is just ridiculous to me. Anyways, I like the Renaissance and classical stuff too, but medieval it's kind of 1,000 years. Skipping 1,000 years is kind of a dumb idea, in my opinion. Anyways, I've been talking about this for too long. And so let's see, what else did I read? I've been reading Besides Adelaide, slowly getting through this Company H. Not really sure how to say it. Company H by Sam R. Watkins. So it's Company H, or a sideshow of the Big Show, a memoir of the Civil War. I think this is a Confederate soldier. It's kind of his memoir. He survived the whole war. So American Civil War, of course. Along those lines, I've been reading. I've read a few of the chapters. They're basically essays. In this Mighty Scourge by James M. McPherson. This one is more entertaining, in my opinion, than Company H. Company H gets you, like down in the dirty and like the actual stuff that was going on. This is, of course, modern story and talking. So there's that. And then I think last but not least, I read a little bit of the Canterbury Tales. I'm actually mostly listening to it as a reread. I think the audiobook was free with Audible membership. And so this is just one of the versions of the Canterbury Tales I have. I have several. This is one that just has the original Middle English with, like little helping things to define some more archaic terms that, don't really necessarily survive in a modern English. Of course, you have the general prologue. I'm further, some lady's butt was kissed. If you know, it was hilarious, actually. Of course, I laughed. This is Wanda April with his shootish sota, the drucht of March hath perset the rota, and bothered every vein in sweet liqueur, of which vertu engendered is the floor. One Zephyrus eke with his sweet breath, in spirit hath and every halt and heth, the tender copers and the younger sona, hath in the ram his half coos rona, and smaller fowlers maken melodia, that sleeping all the neat with open ear. Anyways, I love the Canterbury Tales. I think Chaucer is probably one of the best poets ever. He's just hilarious too, which I like that. Okay, I think that's all the reading. I'm only 17 minutes in. I'll try to keep the rest of this short. Actually, it's not all the reading. I've been reading excerpts mostly for class on things like ethnocentrism. Oh, it's Clark Ashton Smith's birthday today, which, the 13th, so the day before you were watching this. I played some Spawn of Dragon Spear with my wife, and we streamed it a week ago. That was fun. I read some Socrates, read some Plato, specifically the Allegory of the Cave, which went pretty well with the Heart Sutra? I think I also read some of that. Read about Buddhism as well, along with that, of course. And, of course, the American Civil War. As far as short stories go, besides the ones I finished in Old Moon, I think I just read one other one. Yes, it was Gonna Roll the Bones by Fritz Leiber, and in Dangerous Visions, edited by Harlan Ellison and Isaac Asimov. Very good, honestly. I think I would say I enjoyed it more than Smoke Ghost, but not as much as what's that one story? The automatic gun, automatic pistol. Anyways, they're different. I think Gonna Roll the Bones is very enthralling. Actually, it kept my attention really well. But it's not as creepy as the automatic pistol, or even as a Smoke Ghost. But I really like the story of it. It has these supernatural elements, even horror elements that you'd get from Leiber, of course. I mean, he's a master of horror. Got the award for it. So now, as far as books I got real quick, I'll just go through these really quickly. I got Lavi Tidar's Central Station. Raph from Raph Blue Tax channel. Go and subscribe. Just hit 1,000 subs. So congrats, Raph. Loves Tidar. I found this one really cheap on Audible, so I bought an Audible, and I was like, I should get a physical copy too, just in case. It's not a very long book. There's not a lot of words in this physical edition, and it's like not even 300 pages. The audiobook's pretty short. It's like 8 hours or something. Of course, on normal speed, which I don't know if anyone listens to stuff on normal speed. So I'm looking forward to reading this one probably soon. I'd like to experience some Lavi Tidar. And then I got this Piers Plowman, because I'm going to be reading this soon with Evie, if I'm remembering correctly. This is also Middle English, kind of. I think it's kind of contemporary with the Canterbury Tales. Definitely different. This one's generally known to be harder to read. I just got this today, though. Actually, I need to let Evie know that I got this. But in a summer season, one soft was the sauna. He shop me in shroudes, shroudes. Yeah, I don't know. As I a shipper were. Um, Sounds a little different, but it's pretty straightforward, actually, those first two lines. In a summer season, when soft was the sun, or mild, I guess instead of soft, so I put myself in shrouds as if I were a sheep, basically, so clothes. And that's what it says over here, actually. In a summer season, when the sun was mild, I clad myself in clothes as I'd become a sheep. Pretty interesting first two lines. This is B, the B one, I think. There's A, B, C, Z, maybe another one in there. I'm forgetting. So this is, I think, generally considered the best one, the B manuscript. By William Langland. They don't actually know if it was by a guy named William Langland. Just one of the manuscripts had that name written on the back. So, and then I got Plato, 5 dialogues. So there's the Eurith. I'm gonna mispronounce these. Besides the apology, I know how to say that. Euthyphro. What's those fricatives? Crito, Meno, and Phaedo. I'm not really sure. Shows how well I know all this philosophy stuff. So no, I thought this would be fun. I want to get what's that one book by? Is it Aristotle? Nicomachean, something like that. Anyways, totally blanking right now. And then I got a copy of Anne Radcliffe's The Mysteries of Udolpho. It's quite a large book, actually. Came out in the 1700s, as far as I'm aware. I'm going to read this with Raph, actually, soon. So, finally got my copy. I like how there's this little, I don't even know what you'd call it, like, title page, I guess, at the very beginning of the book. So, like, before Volume 1, Chapter 1. It says, The Mysteries of Udolpho, a romance interspersed with some pieces of poetry by Anne Radcliffe, author of The Romance of the Forest, etc., in 4 volumes. As a poem, fate sits on these dark battlements and frowns, and as the portals open to receive me, her voice, in sullen echoes through the courts, tells of a nameless deed. So I don't know if you can see that, but it actually has a long S in there, which I always appreciate it when they have a long S, because I miss it. Anyways, long S, it looks like an F, actually. Kind of, not completely like an F. They use it, I think, in the Constitution of the United States. I think there's long S's. I need to remember. I don't think they probably, I don't know. Yeah, anyways, probably not actually in the book, just on that title page. Then I got Why We Can't Wait by Martin Luther King Jr. It's his holiday on Monday. It's actually pretty short, so I'm looking forward to reading. I imagine I'll probably read all of this, but I'll at least read Letter from Birmingham Jail, which I don't think I've read before. If I have, it's been a really long time, because I don't remember, obviously. And then I got a copy of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, early 19th century Gothic tale, of course. I've not read it. I'm a little lacking on my Gothic tales, so I wanted to remedy that this year. Okay, so now I'm pretty far in. I realize that. Sorry to those who don't like listening to me, but you're not watching this anyways, probably. So hello, people who like listening to me for some reason. I appreciate you. As far as writing goes, I technically finished early this week my story, All That Remains. That's what it's called right now. At least we'll see if I rename it. It needs some heavy work. It's very rough first draft. Rougher than most of my first drafts. Actually, I generally have pretty clean first drafts. And compared to most people, I feel like I'm also adding generally when I edit. I know a lot of people take away, but I find I generally my first draft is generally very thin. Like I'm just trying to get it out basically, and then I'll add stuff later. So, This one is from my character Renata. Actually, I'm kind of trying to deal with stuff like motherhood here. Um, Obviously, in context of Renata, who's an artificial human. But it's a sword and sorcery, by the way. I'm trying to blend it's like science fantasy technically, but sword and sorcery still. Um, and then it's also like Arthurian. That actually was not on purpose. There's some like ironic twist of like Beowulf stuff. That's definitely my homage to Dragonbait from the Azure Bonds book by Kate Novak and Jeff Grubb. The opening scene was inspired by a image from The Ghost in the Shell. Um, it was also inspired by a scene from Memories of Ice by Steven Erickson. Um, I don't think anyone would probably connect those things at all. If they ever read it, if anyone ever gets a chance to read it. So who knows if any of you ever will, of course. But I'm really hoping actually, as soon as I'm done recording this, to maybe go and mess with that. We'll see if I do and make sure if I can fix it. It's about 3,700 words right now. That's longer than most of my stories. That's what I mean by like being like a short. Uh, Here I go again. Anyways, that just reminded me of something. Um, this is way too long. I'm sorry, everyone. Um, I I think most people go longer. I remember I was submitting to a place which I actually got a rejection for recently for Die by the Sword by DMR Books, which I mentioned earlier. And the story length was like 4,000 minimum. And I realized when I was looking at that, I was like, I've never written a sword and sorcery story that's 4,000 words. They're all shorter. And I've written stories longer than 4,000 words, plenty longer, but they're not sword and sorcery stories. Um, and I like a lot of sword and sorcery. I like a lot of sword and sorcery that's longer, than what I write. But at the same time, I think there's a tendency. I saw someone, um, I'm not trying to call him out, so maybe I won't mention him by name. He said that the novelette was like the form for sword and sorcery. And maybe, but I don't think it's the ideal form. Um, Novelettes and short stories don't sell, as far as into big places with big populations, right? You're not going to get a lot of readers with either of those, anyways. And I personally think a lot of the novelettes I've read that are sword and sorcery, at least by contemporary sword and sorcery authors, are just too long. Like I'll just say it, um, as funny as that sounds to some people, probably. I am all for not wasting words. Do not waste my time. Like I will still come out enjoying your story. I'll almost certainly come out, especially since with how small the genre is at this point. Modern sword and sorcery authors, I'll almost come out, and I probably won't even say anything negative about your story. Why? Because I think it doesn't need it. But at the same time, I just wanted to say here that I think sword and sorcery stories, by and large, unless you have a lot more going on in the story, work better as short stories than they do as novelettes. Um, you're not Robert E. Howard, and you're not Clark Ashton Smith. And even then, those guys were writing for money. They were putting in words to hit higher word counts so they can make more money. I mean, just bluntly, and you can tell when you read Robert E. Howard and when you read Clark Ashton Smith, their stuff is phenomenal still. But I don't think we necessarily need to imitate exactly with their novelettes, right? Because I just don't. I mean, I shouldn't be getting bored in a sword and sorcery story. I should not be getting bored in a sword and sorcery story. And I think maybe it's good for me to say, cut out the boring stuff from your sword and sorcery story, right? Because I don't know if anyone's here watching me write sword and sorcery, um, but with how small the genre is currently, I don't think you're going to get some bad writers. You're going to get some great writers. And I think a lot of people are still good, even if they have some boring stuff in their writing. I'm sure I have some boring stuff in my writing. I mean, like, I'm sure someone thinks it's boring. So obviously, it's all just my opinion. But I think, honestly, brevity. It's just so good. I love brevity. And in Sword and Sorcery, you can go lightning fast. You can give off sparks with the writing. And, sometimes I see some sparks coming and then they like pour water on the fire because they decided to, make the story longer than it needed to be. Anyways, I'm sure no one's watching this point, so it doesn't matter. I just hit 30 minutes. Anyways, that's my 2 cents. Make your stories shorter, people. If it works, heck, I need someone else's opinion, but I did write like a 1,000 word story. I was like, I feel like this works, 1,000 words. And then I see a lot of people criticizing like the idea of flash fiction in general. It's like, okay, cool, fine, whatever. Obviously, no one agrees with me. I'll just won't write novelettes, and that's why I won't get published. But anyways, I guess here's opinionated Liam who doesn't know what he's talking about. That's fine, I guess. I'll just sit over here in my corner. But anyways, I will catch you next time.